Hello, true blue Americans and Bowery boys, coming to you from the 5 Points in Burbank, California. This is the Film versus Film podcast. I am your host, Quinn Boys. I have seen over a dozen period piece films in my life, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and friend, Leonard Smith Jr. What's up, Leonard?
Hey, what's going on, man? I'm just out here trying to break these shackles. Thankfully, I was born in the 2000s, born in the 20s.
You were in the 2000s?
Not in the 2000s. Well, thank God I'm alive in the 2000s. Or if it was a certain time, I would be accosted publicly with no, wait a second, never mind. That still happens today. Anyways.
I think the notable thing about these movies is that we picked a time where even I may have been accosted. Well, that's how far back we went. I would have had something to fear.
You could have been a slave. Like anybody could have been a slave. You know what I'm saying? So
hey, even your pick, man, they were none too kind to the Irish in that movie. And there's,
apparently Irish are worse than black people in some people's eyes, which I found amazing.
Do a job for a nickel that a black person would do for 10 cents. It's stated very plainly. A white man
should get paid a quarter to do. But anyways, we're here on the podcast as always, and this week we're adding a little class to the show this week, and we're doing period pieces, and we could have went a certain way with our choices. Obviously we went egregiously the other way.
We both when you hear period piece, you think like a
Pride and Prejudice,
a bespoke costume drama. You think Pride and Prejudice, or some sort of upstairs downstairs British film from the 1920s where the characters learn that the world war has broken out or something. But we went a little bit of a different angle, and I
don't know if this was even on our radar, but our guest gave us this prompt, and he's a very, very funny guy, great writer, Michael Gutierrez. What's up, Mike?
Is this where I come in?
Yeah, and honestly, you can leave your mic on. You can laugh.
Oh, okay.
He was laughing the whole time, guys, but he had his mic muted.
We were cracking him up left and right. There's we missed all those sweet laughs.
I loved all of the details of being accosted, and and it's very true in both these movies. Color didn't mean anything. It was all about class for the most part. That was definitely one similarity between the two movies.
What it's really all about still to this day, but they're out here. They're manipulators. Anyways, as we said, we're doing period pieces, and I'll go ahead and reveal the choices. If you don't already know, it will be Gladiator versus Gangs of New York. That's right. Neither one of us picked a slave film. Well, I guess one of us kind of did.
Yeah, one of us explicitly picked a slave film.
Yeah, true.
It's not what you think of, perhaps, when you hear a slavery movie, considering it stars an Australian, but it is technically a slavery film.
Who's a Spaniard in this movie.
Yeah, we'll get into all that. Can I ask Michael, this is our first time meeting. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Can I ask what led you to choose period piece dramas, and were Leonard's and my picks what you were expecting when you gave us that prompt?
I thought I really enjoy the genre period pieces, and that's really a genre that Hollywood kind of knocks out of the park, when they throw a lot of money at it.
Yeah.
And I did not expect either one of these movies. I honestly was expecting a slave film or something that took place in like the Renaissance. So I don't know what that says about me, but and one of these.
Do you have a favorite, like a movie that if we were to say period, like that you may have picked? Obviously, we don't ask our guests to pick movies. That would be too much time for all involved. But were you thinking of like any picks we may have given you?
No, I didn't have anything pre-planned. Westerns are technically period pieces, right?
True.
So,
Yeah.
One of my favorite Westerns is Unforgiven. So, I just love that from beginning to end. It's like a great, Greek tragedy. So, I
didn't think of Westerns. Now that you say that, I didn't think of any Westerns that I could have.
I think it's like one of those things. While you are obviously, of course, technically right, and Leonard and I both kind of didn't technically. Well, we technically picked period pieces, but we already said it's not what people think of. I don't think of Westerns as period pieces, but they absolutely are. Like, you're right. I just think of them as Westerns, and maybe that's the problem, is they have their own genre that they've carved out. But Unforgiven is a fantastic movie. I'd love to pick that sometime.
Well, I think too, like with period pieces, you think of something that is historic, right, and something that's so far removed from ourselves and our grandparents and even our great grandparents. Whereas like the Wild West is still like technically we could have a relative that was involved in the Wild West, 4 or 5 generations ago. Whereas you look at something that is, ancient Greece or Rome, or the era of like with the Tudors and all that. It's like, okay, well, that would have to be, that's over 10 generations of removal. So that's probably why. And like there's still like some, especially here in America, there's still like some remnants of the Old West that are still here, and that that's still like applicable to our day-to-day life. Whereas the way the Tudors went about beheading one another, not so much. I mean, at least in some parts of the world maybe, but.
It's funny you bring that up because I am technically related on my mother's side to the coward Robert Ford, the man who shot Jesse James. So
there you go.
No, that's. Wow. I wish that was true. I wish I was just related to famous cowards throughout history.
Well, that's a funny little bit. Well, yeah, we Quinn went way back with the pick Gladiator. Like he said, Russell Crowe. You want to talk about it, Quinn?
Sure. Yeah. Let's go into my pick first. We should also say right before we got on, we should let the audience in with our anxiety, Leonard, as we don't know which. And maybe we'll save it till after we tee up these films. But obviously the point of this podcast is to win the week. You want to pick the better movie. And Michael revealed pretty early on he was not feeling one of these picks. And maybe that's even being charitable. So I don't know which it is yet. So I'm going to just hype up my movie as if this is the one he loves.
I was surprised. I think I know which one it is, but I liked both these films. Normally, if you listen, I come for Quinn hard for his choice because I don't like it. But the last couple of weeks, we've had some really good matchups. I can't deny, but I'm a little surprised by Mike's take before the episode.
I'll save my feelings on your pick until we've gone into it. But yes, my pick was Gladiator. This is the Ridley Scott 2000 historical drama starring Russell Crowe as a Roman soldier who, when the Caesar of the time is murdered by his son, played by Joaquin Phoenix, who assumes power, he has a vendetta against Russell Crowe because he always viewed him as his main competition, sort of the apple of his father's eye. And Russell Crowe, he's just finished yet another campaign. He's ready to go home, be with his wife and kid. He's done. He's had enough bloodshed for a lifetime. And then he gets pulled in. Joaquin Phoenix basically fucks the shit up. He assumes power, and he assumes power by killing his father. So it was very dramatic. But yes,
it's basically a coup because he learned.
It's before. A coup, yeah. As Commodus, which is the name I was trying to remember. I watched this movie. It's funny. Before I even picked this movie, I watched it like a month ago, so I didn't rewatch it. So I'm very current, but also I'm going to be looking up some names. But as Commodus, Joaquin Phoenix kills his father, Marcus Aurelius, and he basically comes for Maximus, which is one of the all-time great protagonist names. Yes. Russell Crowe plays a character called Maximus Decimus Meridius, and he basically he has his wife and son murdered, and Russell Crowe is left for dead, but crucially does not die, gets kind of brought in as a slave and fought through the ranks of the gladiator tournaments, which were the main sport of the time. It's weirdly, you could argue it's definitely a period piece, but it's also kind of a sports movie. There's a lot of layers to this movie. He fights his way up to become a gladiator of great renown, and he gets brought to Rome, where he sets about trying to get revenge on Commodus, who is basically trying to take down Rome from the inside. I mean, if not intentionally, just by his being so poorly suited for the job. So it's a dramatic film. It's an action movie. There are some thrilling, like every gladiator sequence is a little bit different. And for my money, like still holds up. Like I have both of these movies on DVD, Leonard, mine and yours. And I don't think I've dusted off the DVD cases in a while. I had to blow off some of the dust on these and make sure that they were still working in my Blu-ray player. But it really holds up. The action scenes, you can feel like the scope. I think that's the thing. We're going to talk about period pieces, whether it's like takes place in an English manor or Rome, you want to feel the scope and the sweep of history. And I think this movie like nails that. You really feel like you're in there. There's one great sequence in particular where Russell Crowe is fighting some tigers, and you feel like, wow, they really look like they're, Leonard's going to come at me, but I'm sticking to it. I think these scenes hold up. And I think, it's a movie about honor. It's a movie about revenge. It's a movie about, the cost of war. And I think it's one of my favorite period pieces, I guess. Clearly, that's. I wasn't expecting to pick this movie when I got the prompt, and then I thought about it, and I was like, "It's Gladiator."
Okay. Your little ending statement is both these movies are quite similar. It's a story of revenge. It's a story of honor. It's the story of war. It's a story of class, and just how all this carnage. Just the line with Cameron Diaz is like, he's like, it'll be all. Leonardo says, Valen says to Cameron Diaz's character, I can't think of her name right now, it'll all be over tomorrow. And she's like, no, it's not. Like, we're all fucking men. Like, that one big battle isn't going to change anything. But the Gangs of New York, Martin Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis, Cameron Diaz film, set in 1862. Its origin starts in 1846, where you meet a young Valen and his father, the priest, who is going up to battle with Bill the Butcher. It's about Irish immigrants having issues with the Native Americans.
I love that they call them Native Americans throughout the film.
Yeah, at first I thought I was missing something when he was like, we're Native, and he had and Bill the Butcher has this Irish accent. I'm like, wait, what?
They've been there one generation,
right? And they're Native Americans.
There's an issue of a certain area in New York, a poor area next to the harbor, 5 Points, where it's basically a battle of who has control of 5 Points. And in this battle in 1846, Bill the Butcher defeats the priest and the dead rabbits, killing him, and once and for all killing off the whole regime and revolution that they were trying to, I guess, start or were in the midst of. And Valen is like 6, 7, 8 years old. Who knows how old he is? And he sees all this, runs off, becomes an orphan, and then you see him 16 years later coming back to 5 Points, and he's back for revenge. And he meets Bill the Butcher. He comes in, obviously he's got bravado. He's got street knowledge. He's just a smart, well-to-do, experienced person who apparently is just ready for all of this, and becomes Bill the Butcher's apprentice, is under his wing. There's dilemmas of, you see him maybe starting to admire him, but he's like, this motherfucker killed my father. And then like they literally have a party every year on the day that is in commemorance of the day he killed his father. And then you learn there's a great scene, which we'll probably talk about, where Bill is talking to Valen about his father. And in the scene, you're like, wait, does he know that he's his son? Is like this a mind game that he's playing with him? Or is like he just being extremely candid? And he was. And you see that he had truly had admiration for him and respected him. And it's all about honor and this and that, just some white man jargon shit. But, it's whatever.
Are you saying black people don't believe in honor?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm just being an ass. But so Valen's dilemma of killing him, and then somebody out here putting pussy on the pedestal gives him up. His plan is foiled, and then the true we're gonna battle it out. They try to go about it the right way by getting an Irishman to become sheriff, gets murdered. Bill the Butcher just is the OG. He's the Don of the 5 Points. He does whatever the fuck he wants. He gets away with everything. Everyone has to pay him. He has a piece and a hand in everything. And then it's just about him trying to get his revenge. And it also has a large part about class as well. And I guess, like immigration. And there's a lot of different aspects of the story that are involved in this. But I don't know if it's just an action movie. Is this a drama? I feel like it's a drama, but
I would almost say like historical epic. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could use that for both. They are very similar movies, despite being set at least 1,500 years apart.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, as you said, Leonard, there's a lot of overlapping themes and a lot of, revenge of dead family members. And should we get to it? Should we belabor it? I mean, Michael, what did you think of these films? Had you seen both these films? I think, Leonard, you said you had not seen Gladiator before, which we'll get to. I had seen both of these films previously, but not in a while, not in at least 5 years for each.
I wish I knew you owned both, because I would have came and borrowed them from
you.
Could
have come and
rented both. I rented both.
I could have run with you.
I've seen Gladiator. I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 times. Like,
oh, great!
It's just film that blew me away when I saw it in the theater. And yeah, I love Russell Crowe. I love Ridley Scott. I think it's one of his last great films. I had never seen Gangs of New York, and I love Scorsese. I'm one of the 5 people that actually stayed in the theater to finish the Irishman. So, and I enjoyed myself. So, but that's a conversation for a different day. So I didn't know what to expect from Gangs in New York, and it's funny that Leonard brings up these similarities and themes because we'll wait until we get there. But I'm thinking back to the ending of both films, and both films have very similar kind of epilogues and kind of similar conclusions. But like I said, we'll discuss that when we get to the end. Well, your question was, sorry, Quinn, your question was, what did I think of both of them?
Well, I guess, yeah, no, I mean, that perfectly well answers it. I actually like that we're going, just because what you just said sparked something in me where they have similar endings. And I think it's a thing about a lot of important, certainly like big historical epics where it's like, there's literally a line in Gladiator. And this is what you just brought up, Michael, where you said about how they end. And maybe I'm getting it slightly wrong, but where Maximus says, what we do today, what we do now echoes in eternity, right?
Yeah.
In Gangs of New York, the last line is kind of like, well, it's less a line and more a shot. You see,
should we say spoilers?
Yeah. Well, this is
these are 20-year-old movies, but
we're going to spoil both of these movies for sure. But yes, no, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, we're absolutely spoiling it, so we may as well start with the end. But there's just the graves, right? There's the graves just outside, just across the bridge, and there's like a slow dissolve into the various eras of New York, bridging 1962 and 2002, 2002 at the time. And the gravestones are swept away. And I think DiCaprio's character, Amsterdam Valen, even says, like, it's almost like they were never here. The draft riots, which are kind of coincides with the drama of the end of the movie, totally levels New York. And they say it's like, this is the furnace from which New York, as we know it today, will emerge. So Gladiator, I think, is all about like forever and eternity and stuff. And Gangs of New York kind of is, or at least it's dealing with it. But I think it comes down almost in a different way, which is like all these people will be forgotten. These tombstones even will eventually fade away. You don't even know there's dead people buried here, which I thought for a movie I didn't love, I may as well just get it out of the way now, Leonard. I'm not a big Gangs of New York fan. I have seen it. I thought that's maybe the most interesting idea in the movie, and it's the last shot. It's right before the movie ends.
Yeah, it's I think the character of Bill the Butcher is first of all, like Daniel Day-Lewis is just like a tour de force in terms of like a performance. Like, just doesn't really get much better than that in terms of portraying a villain. But I think what's interesting about Bill the Butcher is he's really he's such a poignant figure because he is a reflection of America's corruption. He is a reflection of both all the best things that America can offer, but simultaneously the worst things. And it's interesting with Leo's character, him trying to continually like kind of corrupt him, and trying to get Leo to be on his side. So I thought that was an interesting aspect of his character. I don't want to skip over any of your points.
No, you're absolutely right. Again, there's a Shakespearean element to it, and I know it because Brandon Gleeson grabs Leonardo DiCaprio at one point and goes, "Isn't it just like Shakespeare?" they tell you how Shakespearean it is, but it is. It is a kind of. I think the most interesting thing about this movie, the most interesting character by far, and it's what people remember from this movie, which we'll probably talk about later as well, is Daniel Day-Lewis as Bill the Butcher is so good. I don't think he won an Academy Award for this movie, but
I'll tell you what he
one of his more memorable performances. And that scene where he even before the scene where what you were referring to, Leonard, where he's draped in the American flag and he's sitting by DiCaprio's bed and he's just talking to him about the last honorable man that he ever killed was 15 years ago. And that man happens to be DiCaprio's father, Liam Neeson, who we see die in the first scene. There's that moment where he keeps an image of him. It's not a picture because it's 1860. It keeps a sketching of him above, on his mantle in his hangout, and it gets knocked over at one point, and he makes a point to pick it up and put it back. And there is a kind of respect for the enemy that makes him not a total psycho, but also there's a moment where he's just headbutting DiCaprio repeatedly until he's got blood all over his face. And so he walks the line between both like crazy, batshit crazy, but you're also like, this guy has an internal drive, and there's something very interesting about him.
That's funny because you could say that about Daniel Day-Lewis, because he didn't get an Academy Award, but he did get pneumonia while on the set of this film because he refused to wear any modern clothing. He would only wear clothing from of the time. So like all those scenes where he's out in the cold and like wearing those coats, those are like thin ass like coats with no actual like warm like way to warm him, and he got pneumonia and also refused modern medicine. He was like,
oh my God.
He refused modern medicine and beat pneumonia.
And he didn't even get an Oscar for it.
Didn't even get an Oscar.
He got a BAFTA though, so that's something.
Yeah.
I think about Dan, and we can talk about like, because I think Daniel Day-Lewis is like maybe the first thing you think about when you think about this movie. So we can like go off on him for a little bit. His accent in this movie is like fantastic and weird, and this is a movie with a lot of trouble with accents. But like his like from the first, I don't know if it's his first line where he's like, ears and noses will be the trophies of the day. Like he just starts talking in this weird like New York kind of accent, and I'm like, who is this character? Like he really does feel stripped from history in a certain way that you figure he's going to do the Daniel Day-Lewis method acting thing, which I always kind of roll my eyes at, but you cannot argue with the result.
Yeah, you know what I loved about his character is how he's just like unapologetically like just racist.
Oh
and,
I love it because it's real. Like that's how he would have.
Yeah, it's a reflection of the man. You know, I kind of hate this term, but like he was a man of his time in many different ways and forms, and like just him like like with that scene where they're walking down the street and there's that picture of Lincoln,
yeah,
and he just takes that knife and he just like throws it. Like and it's a nice knife too, and he's just like like just disrespectful to the president, who's trying to, the Civil War is starting and whatnot.
He's pretty upset with him for freeing the slaves. I think that's.
And he just left the knife there. He said it was a nice knife. He just kept it moving. I was like, this dude has a lot of knives, so I'm worried about this knife. All right, well, let's go into the Gladiator. I don't know if
you hadn't seen it, Leonard. I want to hear what you thought about it.
I hadn't seen it.
Certainly you were aware of it and you'd heard of it.
I was aware of it.
Yeah.
It never really intrigued me. I don't know why, but it just didn't. But I liked it. I thought it was good. Some of the shots were kind of weird, but like was also cool though.
Well, it's Ridley Scott. So,
yeah, exactly.
He's gonna give you some weird.
Exactly.
Some weird
yeah. But I feel like it's just your regular, like a story. I feel like I've seen that story so many times. I felt like there was no uniqueness to it necessarily, but I feel like Joaquin Phoenix was great. Like I hated him so much. Like I feel like people don't really talk about that, or maybe him as an actor, but I thought he was amazing. Russell Crowe was good. There was like, there was black people in it with lines.
Were there black people, or was it Jim Honso? I don't know if there were.
There were other black people, but he was the only one who had lines.
I mean, he was a little magical because he was given Maximus, some words of wisdom to motivate him. Because Maximus was basically suicidal up until he met a fellow slave that was like, you don't have to be suicidal. Yeah. He's like, oh, you're right. Thank you, black man.
But it felt like. I wish I had maybe seen it because the entire time I was watching it, I was just thinking like, this feels like a long episode of Game of Thrones. That's what it felt like to me. Like as someone who's watched all the Game of Thrones, I knew that Commodus wanted to fuck his sister, and like it was just all creepy and weird. But I felt like as a period piece, it did a pretty good job. I felt like the fight choreography in both these movies, there were shots where there were spots where I was like, it was kind of weak, but other than that, I'm not mad at it.
It also like kind of left the template for Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and I think Game of Thrones. You look like the Viper and the Viper and the mountain fight and stuff, and you totally can see the parallels to the Gladiator fights in Game.
I will say this: I hated the ending of Gladiator.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah. Did you?
It was just.
What was it about the ending you didn't like?
the movie is like pretty gritty and kind of dark and gory. There's a lot of just like realness and rawness to it, and then the ending felt cheesy and just like kind of out of place to me.
What do you mean, his fight with Commodus, or do you mean just like where does it lose
I'm talking
you?
about the last like 5 minutes where they're just like everything's gonna be great and perfect.
He basically
and,
goes
like,
to heaven.
and like I know they were like building up to it and you keep seeing the shots and stuff, but it was just like this super happy ending when really it kind of wasn't. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like a lot of people lost their lives, a lot of bad things happened to people. There was a lot of people like in fear and pain throughout this movie, and then the ending just was like everything's great now. Like it's like, well, what's gonna happen with Rome and who's gonna like, I just didn't like the ending, but that's just me personally.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Michael, you said you've seen Gladiator 40 to 50 times. Is it safe to assume that this movie rates pretty highly with you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Not to say that, not to say that I went into watching Gangs in New York with with a hatred or anything. Like I went in with an open mind. But yeah, I mean, out of the two movies, yeah, I like Gladiator way more.
Yeah.
The issue I had with Gangs in New York is that, first of all, this thing is almost 4 fucking hours. And like the last, I hesitate to call it an act because it just seemed like it was a string of events without, like, there wasn't anything holding it together. It was just like a montage of clips. It didn't, like, the last hour didn't, like, hour and 15 minutes didn't feel like a movie. Everything that we had been building up to and learning about, like, now you're like in this revolt, and now, like, Bill the Butcher, like,
I see what you're saying, especially the whole class thing and kind of just, and the riots just was thrown in at the end. They were talking about it a little bit, but the fact that it played such a major part at the end, and it was just like, all right, we're gonna get him to be sheriff. Oh, he's dead. Oh, we're gonna do this. Oh, we're all, I see what you're saying there.
I would put it thusly, just like this is the first time Leonardo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese worked together. If I'm forgetting something and you guys remember, let me know. But I think it's Gangs, Aviator, Departed, Shutter Island, and Wolf of Wall Street. That's 5 movies. I don't think I'm leaving anything out.
No, I think you're right. Yeah.
This is the 5th of 5, I think, of their collaborations. If I had to rank them, maybe it's better than Shutter Island, but like there's something about this movie where Scorsese and I thought this, Leonard. I didn't tip my hand, but as I said, I've seen this movie. I own this movie because I think I couldn't find it anywhere when I was in college, and I really wanted to watch it because I was like, oh, it's about gangs of New York in the 1800s, and it's Scorsese and it's DiCaprio, and I'd already seen The Departed and some of their better collaborations. So I was like, how have I not seen this movie? I got to see this movie. But it feels like Scorsese's simultaneously trying to tell this story of Amsterdam Vallon, but also trying to tell you like a lot of the history of New York at the time, which does seem interesting. I know this is based on a book, and I've heard that there is like a 4.5 hour cut, and that's too long. The movie as it is feels too long. But the problem is it feels like he couldn't fully give up like the greater significance of the movie and where it was set. So it's like, it feels like a movie that was cut down to still be really long, but now feels rushed because they're keeping all the New York stuff. And it's like, if you kept a tighter focus on the Bill Butcher Amsterdam relationship, I think that is just like, I think that would have been much more successful. And I think that's where the film kind of loses me a little bit.
And sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I will say, like, if it wasn't for this podcast, I probably never would have seen it. Only because, like, I'm a huge cinephile, and when I was in high school, I read all of the trades, and when this movie came out, they were very public about all of the production challenges that they had, and they actually went and started filming this movie without a completed script. And then the script that the pages that they would shoot were then rapidly being changed each and every day. In fact, William Dafoe and De Niro were supposed to be in this film, and I don't know what parts they were going to play, but there were so many delays that they had to drop out because it affected their other projects. So, the fact that Daniel Day-Lewis was able to craft this character without a real script is amazing. And to Quinn's point, I think, Scorsese there was a lot of, he had been working on this movie for, over 20 years. And there was a lot of, because the book is so big and it covers so much, I think he really was trying to cover everything, touch on everything. But I wish that, I agree, the relationship that we were introduced to, which is Liam Neeson, playing Leo's father, and that battle and being the gangs in New York, and like that aspect, and the relationship between Bill the Butcher and Amsterdam was like the most interesting part of the story. Like the stuff with I was going to call her street urchin, which is not polite, but I guess the thief that Cameron Diaz plays. I thought Henry Thomas's accent was so good. I don't know how you could have that next to Leo, and not fire his dialect coach. I don't know, Henry, fucking Elliot from E.T. His Irish accent was pretty damn good.
Yeah, it was.
And and Cameron Diaz is trying her damnedest, the actor ass off, and I think that she, for the most part, she does a good job. But they needed one. I think they should have done one or two more takes, and and gotten her a dialect coach.
Well, they found accomplished Irish actors Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz to play their leads. I don't know how it went wrong. I don't know how famous Italian Leonardo DiCaprio didn't nail this Irish. It seems like there's a Brad Pitt movie where, and it's not Snatch, Leonard, it's a different one, but there's a Brad Pitt movie where he does the Irish accent. People probably are like, oh, it's so it's sing-songy, but the Irish accent will trip you up, man. You can look real silly in a movie as an American actor just trying to do an Irish lilt, and then you come across pretty bad.
I think Mike knows a little bit. I can't do any accents. There is we were on a sketch team together, and I was like, no, I just can't be in the scene. Or there was one scene where we all had to have British accents, and I was the only one who didn't have it for some reason. We were all it was just stupid. It was
you can't even do a Dick Van Dyke street sweeper accent or chimney sweep.
I don't know. Something about when I do accents, it makes me feel wrong. It feels wrong. I feel
like a liar.
No, I feel like it's some type of caricature type, racist type thing, even though it's just weird. I don't know. And I'm also bad at it. So who knows? But the accents thing I get, but I always think who knows what these people's accents, everybody's going to have different accents, and we don't know necessarily what their upbringing is. Leo was raised in an orphanage. So who knows how
it's true. He's never been to Ireland. I mean, if he was so young that he would have shed the accent. The fallback argument is that he has a hybridized American Irish accent. Exactly. I think the problem is that sometimes he sounds like Leonardo DiCaprio and sometimes he sounds like Patches O'Houlihan. They needed to center it.
It was also an issue with the voiceover. Something, even when he was doing the voiceover, it was his accent wasn't as strong in the voiceover as it was when he was acting. So
as long as I could remember, I've always wanted to be an Irishman. And then you punch in, and that was a Goodfellas reference. I'm sorry.
I got it.
Leonard's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, one thing that I was very curious about was I wanted to see what his life in prison was like. We didn't see that. I wanted to see what kind of life did Bill the Butcher sentence this man to.
Exactly. Because when he comes out, he's so good at everything that he does, and every part that involves of running a racket or running a gang is man, where did he get all this street smart and street knowledge? He says he tries to escape from the orphanage a few times, and that's why he was there so long. They tried to make it to work. It was why is he this old? Shouldn't he have gotten out when he was 18? This dude's 24, 25 years old. What's going on here? It was weird.
It's also there's shades of I think the better DiCaprio Scorsese movie in The Departed in this movie, in the way that he gets released, he goes to work. Jack Nicholson doesn't kill DiCaprio's dad in The Departed, but he does have a distaste for him, and he works his way under his wing as his second in command, and then he tries to overthrow. I don't know. I was this movie is just a rough sketch of a lot of really good ideas that are later made better in future collaborations. I did appreciate the ambition though, Leonard. I mean, it's the reason I was excited to watch it again, even though I knew I'd seen it and didn't like it. I was how do you get this movie wrong? There's so much talent. There's so much as you said, Michael, Scorsese had like read the book in the 70s and had been in some way, shape, or form trying to make the movie since like 78. Like I think that was the first draft. And it was only until they had the box office clout of Titanic star Leonardo DiCaprio that he even could get the movie made, because you needed to recreate, and it looks pretty good, 1860s New York and like the 5 points, and you know, like it looks pretty convincing.
I will say,
go ahead. No, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I will say that both of these films, the production design is amazing. You know, like the production design in Gangs of New York, you could smell the piss in the streets. You could smell the rotting, like, you know, pigs that are hanging up. And Gladiator, you can hear and really feel like the audience wanting these gladiators to kill themselves. When I forget what, I think it's the first or second battle, and there's a female warrior, and you know, Maximus is like, you know, he has a trio of guys, and some of them have already died, and so he's kind of leading them into this next battle, and they like cut someone's head off, and like it's just like this blood, and the way that it was shot, and like the handheld camera movement, it's like you felt like you were there, you were in the Coliseum with them. And you know, Scorsese, like his camera movement is some of the best in the business. It's like really, you know, he does a great job of immersing you into the world. So there was never a moment in watching Gangs in New York where I felt anything rang false. There was never a moment where I felt like it wasn't rural New York in, you know, the 18th or the 19th century. Like it was just great. Everyone, and the costumes were on point. Like everything was fantastic, you know. It grabbed me. It grabbed me, and it just wanted. It grabbed and pulled me through the story, and I was in the story, like I said, up until like the last like hour and 15 minutes. And I'm like, what is happening? Like,
which is a pretty long amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, like it's, you know, it's almost like Scorsese had to remind you how racist this time was. And there's just like a black man just standing I know it's in the middle of a riot, but he's just like standing in the street. He's not doing anything. And they're just like, there he is, there's the nigger. And it's like, whoa, like what? Like he's just standing there. He's not destroying property. He's not hurting anybody. And it's just like, oh yeah, it's a riot. And part of it is
enraged mob of
yeah, exactly, a racially motivated, you know.
I don't even think it was racially motivated. I think they were just angry. So they were just anything that wasn't
that is true. Yeah,
if they were rich, if they were a woman, if they were just out here just beating people up.
That was like a, you know, obviously both of these movies are historical fiction, while some of the characters, like Bill the Butcher, is based on William Poole, who was a character that was similar to the Daniel Day-Lewis character, but crucially they renamed him. He's not the same, so that they could take some liberties with it. And similarly, you know, Commodus was a Caesar back in Rome, but he was not like, there was no Maximus character. So these movies are fiction, but the draft day riots in New York, I did like look at it. Like it's probably the like most horrific riot in New York. And I guess maybe he felt like some historical, like he needed to show that it was truly like it was people were rioting because they didn't want to get drafted to go fight for the Union in the war. And that did result in a number of lynchings, because they didn't want to fight. And two, they were like, well, we're fighting because slavery's been abolished. We don't like black people as it is. So I wonder if maybe Scorsese felt a little bit of like, I got to show. And this is, I guess, again, the kind of the problem the movie gets into. The movie's not really about the greater, you know, it's about what's going on in the 5 points, but he's trying to give you a picture of all of New York. So there's that character, and I don't know, he's D'Angelo Barksdale from The Wire. I don't know his name that's how I'm thinking of him the whole time. I was like, it's D'Angelo. But he's like in DiCaprio's crew. He's a dead rabbit, even though that's typically an Irish gang. But he just gets killed
Lawrence
at the end.
Lawrence Gilliard Jr.
Lawrence Gilliard Jr. He's great. He's great in The Wire. He's got less to do in this. But like, I guess maybe he felt a responsibility to like not hand wave that it wasn't just a bunch of people that were like, they didn't want to get drafted. It's like, these are also, New York was, as the movie shows again and again and again, deeply racist at the time. And while the white people were fighting other white people, it was secondary to like, it's that great. It's that scene where McGloin is going into the church to pray towards the end. He's the bald guy who's like the second in command to, and they're like, the dead rabbits are like, what are you doing in this Irish church? You've joined the quote unquote Native Americans. You've joined up with Bill. You don't get to come to the Irish church and be a Catholic because Bill rejects that. And he's like, well, why are you guys giving me a hard time? You guys have a black person in our church. And it's like, he doesn't say it in those terms, but it's like,
he literally is about to get jumped by a group of people. And the only thing he's mad about is that there's a black person in an Irish Catholic church. He
has betrayed his race. He has betrayed the Irishman, but he's like, yeah, but you guys are associating with a black person, so you're worse than I am. And that just puts it on a T. That's
also earlier in the movie when it's like the beginning of the movie and McGloin is saying something about the Civil War, and he's like, oh, this is about niggas, and he's like, you're worse than a nigga. Or he's like you're the same, basically. Like he called him worse than being a black person. I was just like, it's just crazy that Bill the Butcher's out here continually disparaging Irish people, but has Irish people working around him all the time, and he's using all of them, and they all work for him and pay him. It's like, well, that's literally, American culture for you,
The world is so rich. Like when Henry Thomas, I don't remember the character's name, but Elliot
Johnny.
Okay, so when Johnny is giving Leo a tour of the world, when he shows him like the transgender community, when he shows them the Asian American community, like any one of those worlds, like you could have like just went and thoroughly explored, and it would have been fascinating to see that through the lens of this period.
Yeah.
And they only lightly touch on it. And so it's not so much that I think Gangs in New York is a bad movie. To Quinn's point, I just feel like there's a lot left to be desired. Like I almost want to watch, just because I'm curious, and I like I love Scorsese. I would love to watch his director's cut of the stuff that he had to cut out. That he, because one of the reasons why he had to cut it as severely as he did is because Harvey Weinstein was one of the producers on it, and Harvey was trying to make it more commercial. So I'm curious what concessions Scorsese felt he had to make it more commercial.
Well, one of them reportedly was Cameron Diaz. Not to cut you off, Michael, just to support that point. Harvey apparently, disgraced producer Harvey Weinstein. Apparently, like, they wanted someone more commercial. And I like Cameron Diaz a lot. I think she's a hugely talented actress, and she's funny, which there's no use for that skill in this movie. But she's probably miscast in this movie. It doesn't really, work. Or maybe the character, they just cut all of her best parts. But yeah.
Yeah, her character just wasn't, like they, it seemed like they had like, it's almost like she's the Joker from The Dark Knight. Like she had 3 different origin stories, and you didn't know which one was real or which one was a lie. Like she's a thief. Okay, she's a thief. Bill the Butcher helped her out. Okay, maybe they were an item at one point. Like did she like, was the baby going to die? Did she get the abortion? Because she like was that her choice? Like they didn't, they touched on all these different things with her character, but they didn't thoroughly explore any of it. So I'm curious if, when Cameron signed on, like she had a full role and they just cut it back, and that was just one of the compromises that Scorsese felt like he had to do. But the stuff that I did think worked in the movie were all of the exploring all of the political how corrupt the politicians were. That I found that to be very interesting and very
we're burying a lot of votes here.
What's that?
We're burying a lot of votes here when they had just like the mass grave, and the comment, oh yeah, we're burying a lot of votes here. It's like, God damn, bro.
And there's that great line where like I'm gonna butcher Bill the Butcher's line, but when he says to the politician, after John C. Reilly is killed, and the politicians, I forget what the politician says to Bill the Butcher, but Bill the Butcher turns to him and says, look, like I could find you like people like you a dime a dozen. I need someone like that. Yeah. And that's just like a layer of corruption that is so like thick that you could just sink your teeth into that. And you knew exactly what Bill the Butcher was talking about. and
Yeah.
you knew that he ran the five corners, like he owned that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
no, not at all. I totally agree. And I think I'm watching Leonard's face on this Zoom, and people listening now won't be able to see it. But it's like Leonard's face is he looks like he's watching his father in a fight get killed by Bull the Butcher, and he can only stand by because
I feel like the Golden State Warriors in Game 5 of the 2016 NBA Finals, and Draymond Green kicked somebody in the balls the game before, and we just knew they were going to lose. You just knew they were going to lose. LeBron is up. He's about to dunk, and I'm about to get my shot blocked.
It's not over yet, and I'm going to throw you a lot. There were things, like you're saying, Michael, that I truly liked about this movie. I'll list them in no particular order of importance. One, top hat game. Everyone is wearing these huge, tall top hats, and it's a good look. It's a good look. Bill's got some bad hat hair. You know, he doesn't look as good with the hat off, but they all look good with these huge, like, what do they call it, like stovepipe hats or whatever, where because these aren't like, these are Abe Lincoln top hats.
I'll tell you who didn't look good. McGloin. McGloin did not look good with the hat on.
He's an ugly guy. I like that everyone in this movie hated someone else. Like, I don't like that for humanity, but I like that for the movie, that even the firefighters are fighting each other while a building burns in the background. Like this picture of New York as just a anarchic hellscape, he shoots it, Scorsese, in a lot of reds. And that's because sometimes things are on fire, but it's also like there's fireworks in the sky and that'll like cast a red. It looks like hell. They are in hell. And strangely, if I could get in a time machine, I know you'll feel different about this, son, but if I could get in a time machine and I had to go back to fucking the Rome of Gladiator or New York, not 150 years ago, I would go back to Rome, because I do not want to spend any amount of time. I enjoy watching it, but I don't want to go back to that New York. It looks fucked up. And I like the Irish boxing. There's a couple scenes where they're Irishmen boxing. This is before they allowed black people to box. So it's that like wide stance, lean back with your two fists out forward, like that kind of Irish boxing that they show. I liked a lot of the character notes, a lot of the supporting details of the movie. And I think it's one of those, like, the whole is not equal to the sum of its parts, but the sum of the parts are pretty fun. I was not bored despite feeling that this was quite a long movie.
Okay, well, we've been talking about the movie that's apparently going to lose a lot. Let's talk about Gladiator.
Yeah.
I felt like, if we're going to talk about commercial, I felt like Gladiator was just kind of like commercial. And
see, Leonard said he wasn't coming after my movie, but now that we've been ragging on gangs, he's starting to be more critical about Gladiator. And I'm just I'm going to put a bell on it now, and that's what you're doing.
Well, listen, it was a little bit more commercial. I felt like the depth of there weren't as much depth for the characters in this movie. Like, it's all kind of surface level. I feel like, obviously there's a mother's love for her child, but we don't really know much about the sister. We know that she loved Maximus at some point, and it's just all like, oh, my father didn't love me. Oh, my sister didn't love me. Or we used to be together, but it didn't work out. Maximus's character is obviously a great character. It's kind of like a one note, I'm going to get revenge for. Like, I feel like everything is kind of one note. You know what I'm saying? As far as all the characters. But my favorite part about Gladiator, I think, was just Joaquin Phoenix, because I just hated his character so much. He did such a good job at playing Commodus and
slave. Remove your helmet and tell me your name.
Yes. He is almost equal to, I think, he's not quite, but he's almost equal to Bill the Butcher in a totally different way. He's like a coward, but he's also one of those, like, he's Joffrey, if we want to go with the Game of Thrones reference again. Yes. You know, he's the spoiled little rich boy who now has the keys to the kingdom. And you're like, oh, we're all fucked. Because this guy not only doesn't know what he's doing, he doesn't care. He only cares about himself, and he wants people to love him, but he doesn't do anything to earn the love. And he's a very hateable character.
I just wish there was, like, we knew more of a reason why he was the way he was.
His father never loved him. His father tells him before he kills him. He's like, I probably messed up raising you. He's like, yeah, you did, Dad. You're dead. But I'll say the difference to me, like, if the villains are kind of equal, I agree that Leo and Russell Crowe both have probably a similar motivation. Loved ones were killed, and now we're going to get revenge, and we'll see where the journey takes us. But however one note the character may be, this was like Russell Crowe at the peak of Russell Crowe mania, if such a thing ever existed. And he was like ready for this part. I think Russell Crowe does a lot more with this role than does Leo with.
Oh, I'm not gonna go for Russell Crowe at all. He did great. But
were you not entertained?
I disagree. I disagree with the whole Leo thing because I like with his character and like character art is like he's working for Bill the Butcher, and you see in certain scenes like damn, he's like you see him admire him, and he's like wait, I can't fucking admire this dude. And like there's a scene where he's there and he sees the picture fall and he's realizing these things, and I feel like Leo's character was better than Russell Crowe's character, in my opinion.
Well, and if I may, and Michael, this is like where Leo the podcast gets real tippy and we just start arguing with each other. But
maybe his accent was trash, but I felt like Leo did a great job as an actor in his role.
I would say Russell Crowe having to dig deep to care enough to keep going, but also to win over a populace who like wanted him to just be bloodthirsty and kill. And those moments where he doesn't, those moments where it's one of my favorite moments. I still love that the thumbs up, thumbs down. And he's like, I'm just going to defy the Caesar. I'm just going to defy the emperor. I'm not going to kill this guy. Like, I love those moments where the crowd is wrong, but the crowd is kind of what's keeping him alive. They can't kill Russell Crowe because the crowd will revolt. Rome is in a kind of a tenuous place, but he's like, so he weirdly is able to pull the structures of Gladiator, which is this fucked up thing. And he obviously he's not doing by choice. And he's able to pull that towards him where he gets enough of an audience. He's like, he's like T.O. in Dallas or something. I don't know. He's like, I call the shots, okay? It's not Jerry Jones, it's me, although they shipped T.O. out of Dallas. So there's probably a better example of that. But you know what I'm saying. Come on, Michael, back me up.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say Allen Iverson, but it's similar.
That's better. That's like, a better one.
I mean, but he got traded too. They were like, yeah, we're done with your shit. Yeah, it's interesting because, when you look at the two villains, now that I'm thinking back to it, I couldn't tell you why Bill the Butcher did what he did, other than he's just evil. Like, I don't know what his motivation was, other than he's just a piece of shit. Whereas with the Emperor, like, exactly why he's doing what he's doing. Like, they show you why he's doing it. And they show you why that, and there's all these different layers throughout the movie as to why he hates our protagonist, right? Like, I'm the Emperor. I killed my dad that never loved me, but they still prefer the Gladiator. Like, they basically want him to be their emperor, and they're ashamed of me. Like, I can't even, at a time where it was socially acceptable to fuck your sister, I can't even like fall in love with my sister because she wants to be with the fucking slave. Like, I can't win. Like, I can't win in any way, shape. So I felt very sad for him as a character because I felt that was very, I could have a lot of empathy for someone that all he wanted was just to be loved. That's all he wanted. And he couldn't even get that,
Yeah, he went about it the worst way possible.
Yeah, because he's a spoiled brat, and he didn't have the tools. You're absolutely right. He went about the wrong.
He also wanted power. He didn't just want love. He wanted power. He acted like he wanted love, but he wanted power.
I would argue that power to him was another form of love. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, because he was like, well, if I can't organically have people love me, then I'm going to force them to respect me. And out of that, I'll be loved as an icon.
He does say that. He's like, if he doesn't respect me, then how can he love me? He does say that. I will say this though. I feel like Bill the Butcher, he talks about how he also came from an orphanage, how his father was killed, like, before he knows who Valen
in like
is.
the War of 1812, I think, for doing the math on. Yeah.
And then he also talks, and then in the monologue he gives to Valen, he's like, do you know how long I've survived this long? Is fear. The reason he literally is telling him the reason why he is the way he is, because he has to be that way for him to make it. All the people that he's wronged, and he lives through fear because no one will do him right, and he was worried about. It's all about power with him. And he was talking earlier about how he was worried that he would have died at the hands of a coward. He was like, if that would have been my end, I would have been shot by some no-name dude who had nothing who he was so like, who sent you? I understood why he was the way he was. It made sense to me.
He also, if we're going to talk, like, Daniel Day-Lewis is maybe the thing about Gangs of New York that most people remember. I think we should give a little bit of time to the before we move into our criteria, Leonard, but to the Gladiator scenes in Gladiator. And I know because They say, what was it? I think going back to Scorsese for a moment, the reason that like Raging Bull works so well is because he shoots every fight scene like it's a different, like he's approaching it a different way. And I love the like variety in the Gladiator fights. I love that one with the fight where they're together with the chariots, where like in real time you get to see Russell Crowe, Maximus, fall back on his general training and be like, "You go over here. Let's make a fit. We're gonna like put the stick through the spoke in the wheel so that we can collapse with it." Like, I love that one. I love what I think it's.
Hold on, wait. I'm gonna say something about that one scene though.
All right.
I felt like some of the Gladiator scenes were overdone to try to like, for like eye candy and to make it exciting. And it's like, all right, I want this to feel real. But there were so many chariots out there and they were taking out so many men. But if you notice how that scene ends, they like take out one chariot and it takes out another. Then all of a sudden, if you look at it, it's like really dope and it's like shot well and it looks crazy. But all of a sudden, all the other chariots just start crashing and they just take out 4 extra chariots for doing nothing. Right. I just remember watching and just being like, okay, well, how did that chariot just crash? And then they all just start crashing into walls and stuff. And it just, I didn't appreciate that.
That's fine. I will say, I think that like the reason I picked that moment is because it does show like this isn't just some guy. Most of these people are slaves who maybe were soldiers, but were probably not like, they're just like, you're going to die. So fight. Here's a mace. But Russell Crowe is like the lead general of the Roman army that's going on Congress. So I believe, is it 100% accurate? No, this movie is less accurate. It's also set much longer ago. They're speaking, Russell Crowe's speaking with his normal accent. He's not actually a Spaniard, exactly. They're speaking with the like English version of the Romans. Like they don't seem Italian. They seem kind of English, but that doesn't matter.
And if these people were slaves, then all I'm saying is these people were gladiators and they all get taken out so easily, especially the first gladiator scene where there's like 6, the first one before they get to Rome and they all have on the armor and this and that. He kills all of them so easily. I know Maximus is a badass, but like it was just,
I think that difference is supposed to illustrate, though, like if you took prime A-Rod and just put him up against a bunch of A-ball players, he'd go home run every time because these guys are not, they don't have the training.
But the other dudes who I guess were also the Reds also were killing the fuck out of these dudes too. Yeah. That's all. I'm just saying when he creates like a battalion, is like, okay, all these, he says, I hear like 4 or 5, 6 dudes are like, yeah, we served in the army, but there's like 20 dudes out there and they work together as a unit all of a sudden.
It also stands to reason the characters that last the longest will be the best fighters because the ones that aren't good get got. But I just wanted like when it was still thrilling, that scene. And obviously, yes, he was not really that close to Tiger, but there's some shots where he's fighting Tigris of Gaul, like in that last big gladiator fight before he fights Commodus at the end, where they have, they're just trapdoor tigers coming out after. And it's like, I was reading about that. They would do shit like that in gladiator fights. They would have like those trapdoors underneath the stage and then they just like, you're fucked. And I appreciated how different each one of those was. And it wasn't, because I'm with you, Leonard. You've said on this podcast before, you're not an action movie guy necessarily. You can find, if it's not well staged, you can find some of those sequences boring. I was never bored. I was like, oh, sweet. What are they going to do this time? What's the interesting thing going to be?
I can't deny that. I was.
What do you think about the gladiator fight scenes?
I was never bored either. But that one tiger thing, when the tiger jumps on his back, he just fucking throws the tiger off his back like it ain't shit. What, you Superman, my guy? Like
Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe grew up in Australia. They do shit differently back there. All right, he could throw a tiger. He threw a phone at a. That's not a good example. Good example. Michael, what did you think of the gladiator fight scenes, or just more about gladiator in general?
Like the again, like because of the steady cam and the handheld camera movement and the quick cuts and the editing, like I felt like I was there. The sound design is just fucking fantastic, and with I believe it was Hans Zimmer that did the score, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
It was.
So you put all those elements together, and it's like, and because and taking out how many times I've seen Gladiator, just watching those battles and being emotionally like involved and invested in Maximus and wanting him to succeed, to me, like it made sense that if he's talking to people that have military experience, like it tracked for me that and because he was a former general, it tracked for me that he'd be able to lead in that moment and they would be able to succeed even against all odds, because even the equipment that they had weren't as good as their opponents.
Yeah.
And so but that kind of like adds to his legend, right? That adds to why he's the people's champion,
Yeah.
because he's able to pull that stuff off. So for me, that didn't bother me as much. The accents in this, I guess because it's a period piece that we've been conditioned to think that Romans in those times spoke with British accents or European accents, and so I mean, I could say that if I'm comparing the two films, it's probably not fair for me to dig on Cameron Diaz's lack of an accent or Leo's lack of an accent. If
there's no consistent accent amongst,
right,
they're all people from all over in this, so it's not like anybody they would have.
Scorsese was definitely like going around, or he had someone hired to, and being like, "This is period." Like, not to put my man Leo on the spot, his teeth looked kind of bad in this. Like, he was like, you wouldn't brush your teeth. Like, it was much more of a, we want to recreate New York as closely as we can. Where I think Gladiator was like, this is a swords and sandals epic. We're going to give you the Caesar haircut where we just push it forward, but otherwise you're Russell Crowe. I don't think they took it as seriously.
You said that. There was way more attention to detail in Gangs of New York. Everybody's teeth was fucked up unless they were wealthy. Nobody's teeth was fucked up in Gladiator. That was one thing I noticed, but I wasn't going to really call it out. But I feel like I got to do whatever I got to do now. Let's go ahead and talk about our first crime.
Real quick about the health. What scene, no matter how many times I see the movie, that grosses me out is when Maximus is coming to, and he's got that wound and all the maggots are in there.
Oh yes.
And he's just and he's gonna touch it, and then forget the character's name, but homeboy's like, yo, just leave him in there. They're gonna clean it out. It's like
Juba, I think.
When Juba's like, oh, just leave him in. It's like, oh, I guess I'll just let these insects eat me. I don't know.
Yeah, that was dope. And his wounds heal pretty fast also. But anyways, let's talk about criteria. First one is pop culture. I mean, I feel like just on the line, are you entertained?
Are you not? Are you not entertained?
I mean, I don't know what Gangs of New York has any sway in any pop culture.
Gangs of New York has Daniel Day-Lewis going whoopsie daisy, which apparently was an ad lib when he's throwing knives at Cameron Diaz. But yeah, I don't know that there's any. I mean, are you not entertained? I think it's safe to say at this point, 20 years out, that's like one of the great classic movie lines where people are probably saying it and they don't even know what they're referencing, which speaks more to how
it's up there with King Kong ain't got shit on me. And
also what we do here echoes throughout eternity is a little bit lamer, but you'll see that in some yearbook quotes or something. You'll see that pop up.
The thing about Gladiator that, it's probably unfair the match Gladiator with something like Gangs of New York, because Gladiator was such a when you saw that movie in the theater, it's that it was very much of its time, and it represents that period of time, and it's a cinematic wonder with all the special effects and stuff. If you guys look at any of the behind the scenes of how they pulled some of this stuff off, it's just amazing. Yeah. But it's kind of like The Matrix the year before, or Fight Club that also came out in '99. It's when you watch in terms of pop culture, when you Gladiator resonates in a way that Gangs of New York doesn't
at all. It doesn't at all.
Yeah, it just doesn't.
When you watch Gladiator, you're like, oh, this movie came out sometime between '99 and 2003 or something. It when you watch it.
There's one thing for those who know from Gangs of New York, and that's Bill the Butcher, who we've talked about at length, so we don't need to kind of rehash it. But I think just his overall, but it's tough because it's not a line. It's not one moment, but I think, and it's also not that Daniel Day-Lewis now is kind of known just for being Daniel Day-Lewis. He's not that closely associated with the role, but I remember at the time it was oh, Bill the Butcher, that was kind of one of his things. And I just don't know that it exists today in the same way that Gladiator does. And as we talked about pop cultural imprint, you see echoes of Gladiator in Game of Thrones, which was the most popular show, for better or worse, of the last decade. So, I mean,
if Boardwalk Empire reminded me anything, or maybe it's obvious that because he did it, it's Boardwalk Empire. I get a lot of Boardwalk Empire feel from from Gangs of New York.
Well, and Scorsese did direct the pilot.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And he was an EP, so his fingerprints are all over.
Yeah, he was the executive producer. So, and he directed the first episode. I think he directed like the premiere and maybe a finale. He directed a couple episodes. Yeah.
Also, Stephen Graham, who plays Capone in Boardwalk Empire, is in this movie as Shang. I just had to look it up. His name is Shang with a G. It doesn't sound Irish to me, but that's what his character's name is.
He had a great Irish accent. I'm like, look, Al Capone. You know
who I'm really glad to hold it down for the Irish in this movie? We haven't talked about him, but I love him in everything, is Brendan Gleeson. And when he just gets butchered, he literally gets butchered by Bill the Butcher. He just throws a big old meat cleaver into his back. But Brendan Gleeson has the kindest, like, he's just my vision of what Irish people are. And I'm Irish, but I don't think, like, Brendan Gleeson just has that, like, great warm quality in movies, and when you see him go, you knew immediately he was going to die. But he's just he's a wonderful character actor, and he supports the film in really well. Also, John C. Reilly is in this movie with an Irish accent. So
yeah, John C. is just like your utility guy. You can put him in anything, and
this man has. You put him up with Will Ferrell, you put him up with Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, this man is an amazing all around great actor. Like, it's crazy.
You guys ever seen River Wild?
I haven't.
No,
you guys should watch that. I won't spoil it, but it takes place on a family that is on a giant raft, whitewater rafting, and it's Meryl Streep.
Wait, they're in a raft the entire movie.
Yes, but it's because they come across some bank robbers, and the bank robbers are Kevin Bacon and John C. Reilly. Ooh. And so you get to see John C. Reilly play a villain. And
is it young John C. Reilly?
Yeah. I mean, this is like mid '90s, so it's got the
awesome.
It's got the
kids. You said Kevin Bacon, I was like, it's got to be a young John C. Reilly. If Kevin Bacon was in this movie.
I mean, it's like John C. Reilly around like What's Eating Gilbert Grape. So
I mean, I've only seen 24 films in my life, but I'm willing to add that to the list of the movies I've seen, Leonard. What is our second criteria, Leonard?
How well do these films hold up?
Okay, I think we've kind of been talking about that too. It's an interesting question. We talk about it every time. It's an interesting question when you talk about a period piece, how well it holds up, because really, how much does that matter in a period? Like, I would say Gladiator and parts of Gangs of New York, the fight scenes, they do that thing where it's kind of choppy, like you slow the frame rate down. So it's like slow-mo, but also it's choppy. It's not like Matrix slow-mo where it's very smooth. I thought the fight scene in the beginning of Gladiator where he's like riding on the horse, and like it gets really kind of slow and stuff, that I don't know if it's dated. I just know that, like you were saying, Michael, that's very early 2000s to me. That's what that looks like to me, is action scenes. They're kind of like choppy and gritty and slower a little bit. I thought the fight scenes in Gladiator are better than the fight scenes in Gangs of New York. I thought some of the fight scenes in Gangs of New York were like, okay. Crucially, the end where they're building towards the whole fight scene, they get blown up right away. So it's a very long movie with a lot of people fighting, but very few like well choreographed big fights. I liked Catwoman being in Gangs of New York. That woman who had apparently was based on a real person. That woman who was fighting for the Irish, just filed her teeth down and was ripping people's ears off and paying for drinks with earlobes.
It was all the swish. It was like all the leftover different alcohols that you would.
Yeah. It was just getting like jungle juice from.
But I mean, I feel like as far as holds up, Gangs of New York still looks very good. Like, cinematically, it looks great. Set design, costume design, all looks amazing. Feels real. There's no like whitewashed Sandlot bullshit where the black people are swimming in the pool with the white people and shit. But I don't really
get over that Sandlot thing.
I've never thought about that. You're absolutely right.
Michael, I'd never thought about that either. And when I gave Leonard the movie Sandlot so we could talk about fun sports movies, Leonard was like, this movie's racist as hell, right? And that's the joy of doing a podcast with Leonard, is I learned you were completely right. But I was like, weirdly, I was like, do I have to defend this? I was like, no, you can't defend it. You just got to let it go. That's what happened.
Yeah, Sandlot is just like, man, it was great being white in the 60s. Sure, we'll have this black person and this Hispanic person in the pool with us. No, it wouldn't have happened, but fuck it. Let's pretend like it did. Man,
damn, you're so right. Like, that's just historically inaccurate.
There.
Can you imagine though if they played Sandlot the exact same way? They shouldn't have, but if they played Sandlot the exact same way, and that scene plays out with the funny like I'm pretending to drown and now I'm kissing the lifeguard. Also another thing that doesn't hold up, and yet that scene plays out the same way. But then they just like you see in the background is their black friend who's not allowed in the pool. He's just like standing outside. That'd be fucked up.
It would be very fucked up. But I would have been like, this is real. So I feel like they both hold up pretty well. Let's get to the most important criteria.
Yeah.
Criteria number 3. Was Steve Buscemi in either one of these films?
He should have been. And he would have felt out of place in Gladiator.
Yeah, unless he was one of those guys that they kill early, where he's like, it's like a joke that he can't lift the sword or something, and then like Russell Crowe lops his head off.
Yeah. We were talking about Scorsese and Boardwalk Empire, so I just kind of feel like if Buscemi was going to be in it, he'd have to be in Gangs in New York.
Yeah, for sure. 100% he's in Gangs of New York.
Who is he in Gangs of New York though? Because he's not a dead rabbit. He's not Irish. Although neither is Leonardo DiCaprio, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But
I mean, I feel like he'd be one of the natives, maybe one of the people in the native crew. Maybe a politician.
I think a politician.
I was going to say like a tailor or some type of snake or, like someone that would, support, like he'd be like a double agent, or something like that.
You know what? I'm looking it up and apparently he was in it. He just didn't make the final cut. So,
wait. So funny.
No, I'm joking.
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to be like, oh, that tracks.
What about that family, that rich family at the end that's eating dinner and then the riots break out and they get their home broken into? I could have seen him as like the dad who like takes the gun and then just gets
hold on. I was just about to talk about that. The dad in that scene, who is the politician with the eyebrows, is also the same motherfucker who announces the fights at the Glad. He's in both movies.
I recognized it too, Leonard. You can't hide those eyebrows. Those eyebrows are.
I was like, yo, those eyebrows look. And then I had to look it up, and I was like, it is the same dude, David Hemmings. But I will say this: we should have fucking made this category. Was Tommy Flanagan in our movie, because Tommy Flanagan makes another appearance on an episode of Film versus Film podcast.
Tommy Flanagan is okay. So I thought I spotted him too, Leonard. Is he the one who is like, I already fucking voted or something? They're like, great, you can vote again. Is that him? Who was he?
He's Cicero in Gladiator.
Oh, you're talking about Gladiator. I'm sorry, man. I thought he was. I'm
just talking about how it's been like 3 or 4 episodes now that he's been in.
He's Russell Crowe's like only remaining friend other than Jim on Honsu.
He's that. He was in The Game, which was last season.
No, The Game was this season.
Was The Game this season?
Yeah.
Oh shit! Well, so it
was the 1%.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. He's in The Game. He's in this. He's in All About the Benjamins, and he was in one more movie, I think.
Oh man.
Yeah.
He's a friend of the pod at this point, even though we've never met him and he'd never come on.
So the reason why we started this podcast was because I had this whole Princess Bride Harlem Nights hypothesis. Like all black people have seen Harlem Nights, but they haven't seen Princess Bride, and all white people have seen Princess Bride, but they haven't seen Harlem Nights.
Oh, that is so true. Because I've never seen all of Princess Bride.
Exactly, right?
And so I still haven't seen Harlem Nights.
I've had this hypothesis for like 10, 15 years, and I always ask people whenever it comes up. So I was trying to find the equivalent of that for like an early 2000s movie. And I know, but by then, white media was so popular that everyone had seen any like popular white media. But I know what the black movie would be in that category, and would be All About the Benjamins. Every black person has seen All About the Benjamins. I'm not saying it's a great movie, but white people don't know it exists at all. They don't know. They know nothing about All About the Benjamins.
Well, but, it's like Carl Tart and I like we bonded over like the 5 Heartbeats, and like he and I went to go see a documentary about the making of that movie. And it's like, I don't think any white person has ever heard of the 5 Heartbeats. Like it's just,
no way.
That's no way. Such a niche like film. Anyway,
I'd be remiss to not say right now that's the first time I've ever heard of that movie.
Exactly. And that's how this podcast started.
So Steve Buscemi doesn't, he probably would make more sense in Gangs of New York. We don't really know where he fits in.
Well, you know what? I just thought about this. Next episode, It's his time.
You're right.
Next episode is.
You're right. There's a little tease for you, but until we get there,
shine.
Before we do stats, Leonard, I just wanted to do a quick game, and I wanted to give you a couple. We've done this before. There were a lot of fun gang names in Gangs of New York, and I just wanted to list a couple out. Michael, Leonard, you guys can both play. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to give you some gang names, but one of them is going to not be real, and you need to tell me which one is. You need to spot the false, okay?
Are you going to give us two options, or are you going to give us?
I'm going to give you four. 3 of them will be legit, and 1 of them will not.
And there are 3 questions, or there's only 1 question?
We'll see how many I can think of, because it's always hard to think of a big one.
Okay.
All right, so we got in Gangs of New York. These are gangs that were mentioned in the film. We got the Swamp Eagles. We got the Broadway Twisters.
That's it.
We got the Knockaround Boys.
Okay.
And we got the Slaughterhousers.
It's the Broadway Twisters.
Michael, is that your answer? We got Broadway Twisters, Knockaround Boys, Swamp Eagles, and Slaughterhousers.
Honestly, they all sound like they could. I wish I was paying attention. I'm gonna go with Leonard. I'm gonna say that the Broadway Twisters is the false one.
Guys, that's a real gang. It's the Knockaround Boys. There are no Knockaround Boys.
Wait, dude, that was a good one.
Yeah.
The Knockaround Boys sounds like a legit. Like I swear I would have heard that. That was like one of the ones I was more sure about.
Oh. All right, I got another one for you then.
We got to bring games back.
Games, they lighten the mood. We got the Daybreak Boys, the Dead Rabbits,
okay,
True Blue Americans, or Sly and the Family Stone.
I hate you so much.
You know what, Quinn? I appreciate the attaboy. I appreciate the lob you threw up for us. That was so
Just
easy.
need you guys to get one.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I think is it the True Blue American? Okay, Sly the Family Stone.
Correct.
And what's this last one?
You know what? Shit, I don't have enough to make up the last one, so I'll just give you 3. No, I'm going to make it easier. I'm just going to give you 3. All right?
All right.
We got Shirt Tails, Little 40 Thieves, or Dirty Mike and the Boys.
I really like Dirty Mike and the Boys, but I'm gonna go with that.
I'm going with Dirty Mike and the Boys.
Yeah, unfortunately, Dirty Mike and the Boys is the gang from the Will Ferrell movie. Shit, what is it? The Will Ferrell Mark Wahlberg movie. Oh my God, where they
Stepdad or whatever?
No, not Stepdad. It's the
other guys.
The other guys. Dirty Mike and the Boys are the guys that have sex in Will Ferrell's Prius. So you guys, you both
Beta.
The Shirt Tails and the Little 40 Thieves are those are real gangs mentioned in the film Gangs of New York.
Okay.
So that's the game. You guys got 2 out of 3. So congrats to both of you. It means nothing, but I just wanted to
statistics. We're gonna start with Gangs of New York. It's got a 73% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 7 out of 10 on IMDb. And let's see how much money this thing made. Ooh, its budget was $100 million. It's kind of quite a bit for a 2001 film, and it only made 193.8. I say only, but it's
Scorsese, so
yeah,
it's supposed to make money.
Yeah.
That's
kind of a low box office, surprisingly. But I guess not. Apparently, it sucks.
But a bit of a higher audience and Rotten Tomatoes score than I remember. I figured this movie wouldn't have been trashed, but I thought it was a little bit more closer to mixed. So that's interesting.
It got a ton of Academy Awards.
It got like 10 Academy Awards.
Got a couple Academy. You're absolutely right, Michael. Got a ton of Academy Award nominations. Crucially,
nominations. Yeah.
0 wins, which leads into my category. My part of this category for Gladiator, which was nominated for I don't know how many Academy Awards, but it won Best Picture and it won Best Actor for Russell. Oh wait, did Russell Crowe not win Best Actor? Let me make.
No. He won Best Actor because he should have won for Inside Man and he lost.
And it also won
Okay,
Best
so he
Picture.
won. He won for Best Actor. What was he up against? I'm kind of surprised.
I'm more surprised, as much as I really like this movie, I'm kind of more surprised looking back that it won Best Picture, because these are not the types of movies to win Best Picture.
Yeah, like that was like what's weird about the Academy is that like from like 2000 and like 2000 like 4, 5. That's a real like it's just a really weird time for movies.
Yeah.
And Russell Crowe won for Gladiator because he should have won for Inside Man. And I forget who he lost. Oh, you know what? I think he lost to Kevin
Jamie
Spacey for American Beauty. And so it was one of those toe-to-toe races. I believe he lost.
The Academy wishes they could take that back.
I was about to say, how's that one held up? So the Gladiator, just so it's all out there, it won Best Picture, it won Best Actor in a Leading Role, Russell Crowe, Best Costume, Best Sound, and Best Effects. It was also nominated for Ridley Scott directing and Joaquin Phoenix Best Supporting Actor. They did not win those, but clearly this was a much loved, much celebrated movie at the time. If we're going to just do quick rounding out the stats, it was made for, according to Wikipedia, $103 million and brought in $460 million worldwide. That is a smashing success to go along with the critical praise. And the Rotten Tomatoes score is, I'm checking now. Let's see as this loads.
It is.
If you have it before me,
77%.
77%.
I'm
Okay.
surprised. 8.5 on IMDb.
8.5.
Yeah, 8.5.
So that's one of the more highly rated.
Yeah,
films
that's a
on
pretty
IMDb.
highly rated for IMDb.
So there we go. I mean, I don't know if stats tells us anything. I'm a little bit surprised about Gangs not making more money, especially because it had Leo, who like was riding that Titanic wave.
Yeah.
Pretty much through till today. I mean, he's just been a big box office star ever since Titanic.
Well, I don't think it's the Titanic wave. I think it's the Leonardo DiCaprio talent wave. The man's just talented.
Well, you're right. I don't mean riding the wave like he didn't deserve it. I just mean like after Titanic, and he was in the most, which was a big hit because of him and Kate Winslet. But yeah, he was like the A1 steak sauce of box office stars. I don't know.
100%. But I 100% will tell you this. The only reason why I even saw this movie when I was younger, and I hadn't seen it in a long time, and this was a hard choice for me to pick, and I remember like really liking this movie when I was younger. The only reason why I'd ever even watched this movie was because Leonardo DiCaprio was in it. Like I wanted to be an actor, and I watched everything that Leonardo DiCaprio like did when I was like that age. So,
have you guys done The Aviator yet?
It has not come up. I've seen it. It has not come up in either of our picks yet.
I should have chose that. Apparently,
would have been an interesting. Would have suited period piece pretty well.
Yeah, it would have suited period piece fucking well. Good,
I'm of the opinion that because you know how like Michael Jordan retired, went to baseball, and came back.
Yeah,
and then
we're well versed on Michael Jordan in this podcast. We love.
Oh, okay.
Michael.
Oh yeah, Michael is not he's honestly not a fan of this podcast. He tried to attack us at our first award ceremony, but it's okay.
It's a fraught history with Michael.
Well, that's so funny. Well, what did you say? Scotty was better than him or something?
No, he shouldn't have done the award show on his front lawn. In retrospect, but
and we also had like placed some bets and we owed him some money.
Yeah,
and we also didn't follow through on some bets he made on us, so he was upset.
We know how he is with bets, but I would say that like so the metaphor I was going to make is like Jordan comes back to the league, he adds his fadeaway jump shot, and arguably he has. Once he comes back for our first full season, he has the best record, in the, wins the championship, all that stuff. And he's like, not only does he have the physical gifts that he had in the 80s, but he also added this other element to it, this other aspect to it. And I'm of the mind that one of the reasons why I love The Aviator is that I feel like DiCaprio clicked to a different level. Like Scorsese was able to help him like elevate himself, and he's never not been great in everything he's done since The Aviator. But it took, so Gangs of New York, a little half-baked, but that gives us The Aviator, The Departed, all these great collaborations that Scorsese and DiCaprio have. So it was 100% worth being in the world for that.
Can I ask you, Michael, off topic slightly, but what is your favorite Scorsese DiCaprio movie?
Ooh, fuck.
Because I go back and forth. I was the first one I saw in theaters and that I loved, which was probably not a surprise, is The Departed. That was what, like, it was in a lot of ways my intro to Scorsese. I was like 15 when that movie came out. I had not seen like Mean Streets and Taxi Driver and a lot of his, like, so this was like my intro to that world. So maybe I hold that movie a little bit more. But I think more highly in his oeuvre. But like the thing that sticks with me, I think no movie arguably has used DiCaprio better or like gotten how we think of him as a movie star than Wolf of Wall Street. I love his performance in that movie, and I feel like that I'd so much rather he have won the Oscar for that movie than for Crawling Through the Snow in The Revenant, which I get it, that was a good performance, but like I just want to see him being a rich asshole. I don't know why. He seems like a nice philanthropic guy, but we just see how he looks and all that stuff, and it's like I feel like he's Jordan Belfort, and I love that, as you say, him working with Scorsese just continued to pay off more and more, I feel like, each time, culminating at least this far in Wolf of Wall Street. I don't want to influence your opinion, but I'll just give mine since I asked the question.
Yeah, that's I feel like even though, his name is on the poster and everything with The Departed, like I feel like he's that's such an ensemble cast. And everyone is kind of on the same, level. I mean, like from Martin Sheen to DiCaprio to
Matt Damon.
Yeah, Matt Damon. To, even though Alec Baldwin's not in it a ton, like, so I would say if you're asking me to make a choice, I would say Wolf of Wall Street as well, but I almost want to say that's tied with like The Aviator, because Wolf of Wall Street that's Scorsese and DiCaprio's 72 and 10 season. Like there's nothing that is a false note in that. And they're both at the top of their games. They know each other very well. And, just with the way that what the story was and with the quick cutting and the narration, all that. I mean, yeah, I would have to say Wolf of Wall Street too. I mean, it's just such a damn good movie.
You can't really go wrong. I mean, yeah, there's a lot. It's a hard decision. Shout out to Cate Blanchett's Katharine Hepburn impression in The Aviator. I
remember when I saw that, I was like, she better win the fucking Oscar, because you close your eyes, you think that's Katharine Hepburn.
I'm pretty sure she resurrected her.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, definitely have me on if you guys are going to do anything Leo related, because I would love to dive into that.
Best Leo movie would be a great prompt for a future Film versus Film podcast. I've already picked and lost with the Titanic. I don't think I'd have picked that one, but that's a story for another time. But
you ever seen Quick and the Dead?
Oh yes, that's young Leo. We're talking about young skinny Leo.
We're talking about Westerns too.
It's true. I want to do best Westerns with you, Michael. I want to do best. Leonard again his eyes are glazed over because he sees the inevitable coming, and I'm just like talking about future fun times and dragging out his misery. So let's move on to the fifth and final criterion, which is basically Michael's decision. Now, Michael, before we let you pick, I'm not going to take anything for granted. We have final arguments. Leonard, would you like me to let you go last, since you let me go last the last 2 times?
Hey, man, I got T-shirts for sale at fullyvaccinatedclub.com. The Gangs in New York was fun, but we all know what's about to happen. This was somehow Quinn hit the nail on the head. Dwayne Wade to who's LeBron James and Terry.
Leonard, I think I won't hammer it anymore. I think I've been making the final argument the whole time. I'll just say, if the prompt is best period piece, the only thing I think you can give to Gangs of New York is that they're probably more period specific and representationally accurate. I don't think ultimately when we're watching movies, which are about being entertained, and I don't really think that matters. I think we've gone over how Gladiator made more money, won more awards. It's more memorable. I think perhaps another film could have been Gladiator. I'm open to those arguments. I don't really see how that other film could be Gangs of New York, but I leave it in the capable hands and decision-making of Michael, our guest, and I cede the rest of my time.
Yeah, it's just going to be Gladiator.
All right.
I was trying to think of, should I have some pomp and circumstance? But I'm like, no, I think the audience knows what's happening.
I thought I had this one, Michael, and obviously I was scared for a moment because I was like, people have different tastes, and you clearly are a big Scorsese and DiCaprio fan, so it's not out of the realm of possibility you would have really loved Gangs in New York. But I was like, I thought I had this one won when I picked it and we sent you our picks. I just thought I had it kind of sewn up, but yeah.
I hadn't seen Gladiator, so I thought I had a chance. I hadn't watched Gladiator in like 10 years. I mean, I hadn't watched Gangs of New York in like 10 years. I still enjoyed it and enjoyed it and thought it was a good movie.
It's a good movie. I
understand the issues and going up against Gladiator. When Michael said before we started recording that, like, oh yeah, one of these I really didn't like. I was really hoping that it was because, like, I really thought it may have been Gladiator. Well, I thought it was Gladiator because, Ridley Scott has kind of done some weird shit. Like some of his choices directed. I know Michael is a cinephile, so I thought it couldn't be Martin Scorsese. It has to be Ridley Scott is the reason why, but I was wrong. So.
Well, and to be honest, I should come clean about this. Before the podcast started, Leonard and I were backstage, and I shivved him in the side. So he's not been fighting. He's not been fighting at 100%.
Okay, all right. A couple quick questions. Do you think there was poison on that shiv on that thing? There's poison on that, right? Or did he just stab him in the right place in the kidney where like he would bleed out? Yeah. Because
I think it was the second thing. I don't think it was poison tip.
You don't think it was poison?
Got him in an artery or whatever.
You think he had enough confidence in himself that he think that he could just beat him by just stabbing him like in the kidney one time before he went up?
To be honest with you, no, that was a kind of a flaw. I remember watching this movie again because I hadn't seen it in a while and being like, "You're still taking kind of a chance, man." Russell fucked up a lot of people bigger than you, and you've shivved him. But like you're still on your own, and if you trip, he's gonna kill you.
He knows how to deal with pain, so it's like it's like either you had to shiv him. That's why I was like, this has to be poisoned. Like I felt like that's why he was taking his time because he was like letting the poison work in because that is the only reason, the only thing that would make sense.
Out.
Yeah,
there's that scene crucially early on in the movie where they do show, and it's like he's a boy prince, but they do show him fighting with his guards. I'm talking about Commodus. They do show him at the campsite like sparring. So you have a sense that he's got like a basic level, and he's probably being taught by really competent guys. So he's probably well trained. But like Maximus would fuck you up. I mean, that you've watched in the best seat in the house him fuck up everyone you've thrown at him. I would have been worried too, and maybe I'm just fatalist and don't believe in myself. That one knife to the ribs is not going to be enough.
You know what's funny though? Did you know that the young Maximus was John Kerry?
No, wait, who
from Stranger Things?
Oh, like Joe Kerry.
Joe Kerry, yeah, Joe Kerry.
Steve the Hair Harrington was young Russell Crowe.
Yes, was his son. I think it was either young Russell Crowe or like he played Maximus Jr. Wow. But also, yeah,
really?
Yeah.
We're gonna have to fact check that. We're gonna get the film versus film fact checkers on that one. I'm gonna take you at face value though, Leonard.
I could be wrong.
You've had a rough episode. I wouldn't be surprised.
And I can't remember the other thing I was gonna say, but that's it. That's all I gotta say.
I mean, I would too, and I forgot about that scene about him training with his guards, but I would argue that, because he is basically a spoiled brat, and because he's so inexperienced in fighting, that he might have a very underdeveloped understanding of what it would take to fight, and like he thinks it's easy. So I don't think he would, he's like, this would be enough. I could just stab him.
His hubris.
Exactly. Make it deep enough. And I could fight him, of course.
Also, as we see, he thinks if this goes south, my boys are going to come in and have my back. And if you've ever been,
that too,
yeah. You've ever been hanging out and you're drunk and belligerent and you're waiting for your boys to come and get your back, and you're like, they don't have your back on this one, and you realize you've gone too far in. Now put yourself in a gladiator arena with 100,000 people watching. It's a very satisfying villain death where he's like, they're not coming to save me.
Yeah.
All right.
No one came to save you, Leonard. This has been a fantastic episode. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
I was up on a 4-1 lead. It is now 4-3. 2 episodes left.
The maggots are eating at the wound in your shoulder, Leonard.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough one. Mike, where can the people find you? What's going on with you, Mike? That's right. Mike got rid of all his social media, so you can't find Mike.
Not all of it. Just Facebook. If you want to, people can
find Instagram. You don't have Instagram anymore either.
No, I'm on Instagram.
Are you? Oh, yeah. I'll try to find you.
Leonard, why are you trying to bury him just because he didn't pick your movie? Let him promote himself.
If the people want to find me, they can look me up on Instagram or Twitter. Black Sparrow 86. That's all one word. So Black Sparrow 86, and they can find me.
It's been a total delight. I say that because it has been, but also because you picked my movie. Like, I think I've had a better time than Leonard, just judging by the facial expressions on this Zoom. But truly, it's been a lot of fun talking about these movies with you, Michael. We realized like how much we wanted to talk about best period piece. I think we both had a couple different ideas for this, but I'm glad that I'm glad that we chose the films that we chose, and it's been a ton of fun. So I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. This was a blast. It was. I love talking films. This is great. Well, Leonard, you're not going to say anything, so I'll just do the sign off here. We will see you next week, where I will try to pull even. Check out our socials for the announcement of the prompt next week. But until then, we will see you at the cinema.